I'm Jessica Ann Pressler, and you've tuned into Your Traitor Within, a podcast that exposes the brutal truths of healing, self-discovery, and breaking free from relentless patterns of self-sabotage. Braunwyn Spinner is a queerness and sobriety advocate, media personality, and press fixture, best known for publicly beginning her sobriety journey on The Real Housewives of Orange County. Since her time on reality TV, Braunwyn has become a powerful voice for both the queer and sober communities, earning a devoted following for her honesty, visibility, and advocacy. Now living in Tennessee with her wife and family, Braunwyn continues to show up and show out, using her platform to highlight the beauty and complexity of queer family life. As a former cover star of Out Traveler, she's a go-to voice on navigating travel while queer and sober, offering insight and inspiration to others doing the same. Through all her work, she continues to redefine what it means to live out loud with purpose, pride, and presence. I've had the privilege of collaborating with Braunwyn on several Instagram Lives and witnessing her ability to assist so many people with integrity, openness, and wisdom as she shares her experiences. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Braunwyn to Your Traitor Within podcast. I want to express my gratitude in advance for your honesty and vulnerability in sharing your Traitor Within story. It is so nice to see you again.
Oh, thank you so much. That was so beautiful.
Well, it's true, though. I have watched you work and I've watched how inspirational you are. And I've seen the comments of people, and I really think you have made a difference in so many people's lives.
I hope so. I hope that all of this craziness was worth something. And if one person has come out or gotten sober, then it's worth everything.
Yes. Your life today looks significantly different from when viewers first met you on The Real Housewives. Can you tell us about where you are now and what brought about these profound changes?
My life when I was on the show and my life now, it's not, it doesn't just look different, it feels so different. I get asked questions a lot about my time on the show, and I have a hard time remembering who that person was. It's almost like you're asking me about a stranger. When I lived in Orange County and I was on the show, I was married to a man. I was your typical Newport Beach housewife. I had nannies. I didn't work. I drank as much as I wanted because I had people that would clean up my messes. Flash forward, 5 years, I'm living in the South. I'm married to a woman. I'm sober. But more than that, I'm the mother to 4 children. I never thought that I would be the financial, the financial support for my 4 kids. I never imagined that their dad would basically take a hard pass on, supporting them. I never thought that I would be able to do that. If you had told me back then, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have to work your ass off. You're going to have to go back to work, not even go back to work. I never worked. I was a stay-at-home mom, and you're going to do it and you're going to thrive. I wouldn't have believed them, but that's how it looks. So now you see a mom, to 4 young kids. I have 7 kids, but 3 are no longer at home. They're out on their own. I'm in 2 full-time school programs. I'm working. I'm navigating a new marriage. Like, none of that is what it was. But the biggest difference is how I feel. I feel like a complete person for the first time.
And it was some road to get here, right? Some journey.
So, when I think about some of the obstacles I've overcome, because a lot of the things I don't talk about, especially when it comes to my divorce and all the custody stuff, I've tried to keep that to myself. But the things that I was put through to get custody of my children is probably the most painful thing I've ever been through. And the hardest thing I've ever been through. And navigating that and getting to the other side of that, I think, is something that I'm just incredibly proud of myself. There was times where I broke down and I didn't know if I was going to be able to get back up. And so now looking, on the other side of that tunnel, going, wow, I just did that. I never would have thought my sobriety journey would be so much harder than my drinking journey. I I thought once I got sober, things would become easier. I never in a million years imagined that they'd become harder, but I was able to navigate them and get through them with grace because I'm sober.
Right. You were able to do better, but it also is more real because you couldn't numb it with drinking, right?
Yeah. And I mean, trust me, there was many times where that sounded so good. Like, I never want to make sobriety look easy because I think sometimes the further along you get in sobriety, there's a tendency to make it look like it's easy. And just because you're living your life and you have to keep going, but there's still those hard times where I'm like, yeah, that would be really just God, having a drink would be really nice right now.
Well, and you were drinking for a long time. So to undo that in your brain, to not to, when you're triggered, to not go there,
Yeah,
hard work.
it is hard work. And it's something that every single day I wake up recommitted to.
Yeah. So proud of you.
Thank you.
So, when did you first recognize your traitor within regarding your sobriety, and how did appearing on The Real Housewives amplify that struggle?
If I'm being incredibly honest, I know I knew the traitor within with drinking decades before I got sober. Um, I knew it, but I didn't want to acknowledge it. So those are two different times when I knew it and when I acknowledged it. Those are 20 years apart. I knew that my drinking was the traitor within when I was very young. I would put myself in situations that were not safe. I would create situations that I was so regretful of. I knew that drinking caused these things, but I wasn't able to admit that because then I'd have to give up drinking. And so I protected drinking at all cost.
So your traitor within was also protecting your traitor within.
Yeah, it was a multi-level thing. I think when I finally admitted to myself, or no, I know when I finally admitted to myself was January 30th, 2020. And that's my sobriety date, where I call them God shots. I've had a few of them in my life where it's almost as if a voice from within gives me a clarity that I can't see. This is the second time it's happened. And both times it saved my life. And so that voice was so clear coming into my brain. This is your last drink. Go ask for help.
What did that feel like?
It was like I could breathe.
Mhm.
Finally admitting I have a problem, I need help. And knowing in that moment that this was actually the last time I was going to ask for help,
Mm.
not trying to reframe the story so that drinking wasn't the issue. And it's been those moments of clarity, those God shots that have come into my head that have really clarified that. But that's when I realized this was my traitor within.
Was being forced to conform in Orange County, especially regarding your sexuality, part of your traitor within? And if so, how did this affect your journey to sobriety and self-acceptance?
I definitely think my sexuality and hiding that and not acknowledging it. Once again, it was the same with drinking. I didn't even acknowledge it to myself. It was always a crazy night or this. I don't want to say Orange County contributed to it. Orange County is not special in how it views women or women's place in the world. That is pretty much universal. I think the bigger conforming is this ingrained patriarchy almost. It is the standard that women are with men. There was no room in my life for what I wanted and for how I saw myself for me to be a queer woman. I was raised in this system that we have where, the default is always men. Women like men, gay men like men, everyone likes men. And so I didn't have the critical thinking skills when I was younger to sort of sort through all of that toxic BS we're fed our entire life. Girls like pink, boys like blue. I mean, it goes on and on. So that wasn't special to Orange County. The wanting to fit in, the wanting to fit the mold, the wanting to be the perfect stay-at-home wife and mother, that of course affected me because that is a part of who I am. I was a wife and a mother, but I'm also so many more things. And I think as women, we are taught to squash that.
Mhm.
and sort of almost be martyrs to motherhood. And that is something that I had to slowly unpeel layer by layer. That, I mean, I'm still doing that. I think all women are. So that was where the conforming came. I also grew up in a time, I'm 47, so in the 80s and 90s, where being a queer woman wasn't something that was elevated. We didn't have pop stars coming out. We didn't have this visibility, you know. Look, I look at Chapel Roan and all these other incredibly beautiful, powerful young girls that are owning their sexuality. We didn't have that. It wasn't cool to be queer. You know, we would make fun of people and use them as insults. So I always wanted to fit in, because part of who I am, part of that traitor, is you're not good enough the way you are. So, but that wasn't special to Orange County at all. I think, and if you watch the shows, you can see every single city, the dynamics are very similar, because growing up as a woman anywhere is hard.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Can you describe a pivotal moment during your final Housewives season when you confronted your inner voice, encouraging you to hide your authentic self?
I think for me, the pivotal moment was the reunion, when everyone was coming at me. And here I had tried to be so open and honest. I'm I'm coming out as queer. I'm newly sober, and I'm having to defend both of these things as lies. You're lying. You're not really an alcoholic. You're lying. You're not really gay. So here I am, being so vulnerable and open about things that I am just beginning to grapple with. Because I was 12 days sober when we started filming, and I hadn't come out yet until the season stopped filming. So these were things that were private and new and raw, and to have them so horribly twisted and then weaponized, that was when you were like, okay, here I am trying to live my authentic life. Maybe I should run back inside and hide.
Of course, that makes sense. And I
Yeah.
want to for you having to go through that. That must have been a very painful time.
It was very hard. And then to have it also public, and then to have people in my town who weren't part of the show, just normal women at the grocery store, come up to me and say horrible things to me. It was, I felt like I didn't have any safe places to go.
Wow. And instead of them embracing you and
Yeah.
wanting to be there for you.
Yeah. It was hard.
So how did messaging from your childhood around independence and self-expression influence the internal struggles you faced in adulthood?
Growing up, I was incredibly independent. My mom was a single mom. She was in med school. She was very busy. I was raised by different grandparents and aunts. So I think the messaging I got from a very early age was nobody really wants you. And I think that has been the longest struggle that I've ever had. Like, and obviously as an adult, I've gone back and done the work, and I realized it wasn't that my mom didn't want me. It wasn't that my dad didn't want me. They were dealing with their own things at the time. They had other issues. They were both very young when they had me. But I think having to unpack all of that, why does nobody want me, has been my biggest challenge in sobriety, in my life, as a mother, as a wife. That is something that we've talked about EMDR before, has really helped with. It's not gone, but where it was a 10 before, it's a 2.
Huge difference.
Yeah. And I know if anyone's listening to this, if you've considered doing EMDR, I am such a huge believer in it.
Yeah. Even in regard to the traitor within, the traitor within is there. It doesn't go away. It's, the triggering piece.
Yeah. It stays there on your shoulder. It just gets a little smaller. And you learn how to talk to it, and you learn how to ignore it.
Yes.
Yeah, it lies to you.
Very, very true. So these wounds from childhood, was it an abandonment wound that came,
It definitely was. And I think because I always had that sense of being abandoned, it presented in many different ways: a need for approval, a need to fit in, sexual promiscuity, drug use. There was all of those things that I did trying to find my community, trying to find a way to fit in. Then you have the extra layer of my sexuality on top of it, which I was keeping to myself. I look back now, I still have some of my friends from junior high and high school. And I was like, yeah, looking back, I had a crush on you, but I didn't know how to verbalize that or what to do with it. It just made me like weird in how I acted in some of my friendships. And I would get very passionate about like my best friend. And then those friendships would burn bright and feel out. Now, looking back, now I know why, because it wasn't just the normal friend. I was obsessed with these girls that I was friends with. And I didn't have the words for that. But I think the biggest trauma that I've had to overcome is that everybody leaves you.
Okay.
And that for sure is a big trigger for me, the leaving.
Do you think you stayed in your marriage too long because of that?
I think I stayed in my marriage for so long because I didn't know what else was out there. I met my ex-husband when I was 18. I didn't have any skills. I didn't have an education. I didn't know if I could exist. I didn't believe that I was strong enough to exist in this world alone.
Okay.
On my own. So I think it was the fear of having to do this adulting thing on my own that kept me in the marriage. And it was also comfortable. We didn't fight a lot. It wasn't like that. We were like family. We weren't like husband and wife, but we were like family and we got along and we were friends. And it was just easy. And I think sometimes I choose the easy route instead of the route that might be harder, but will end. And I'm starting to do that less and less. But I think a lot of the times I was more afraid of the unknown than knowing, well, this is good enough. This is okay. And okay is fine. I never dreamed that things could be great.
Which is now.
Yeah.
It's hard to visualize that because you would be truly open to everything. You'd have to be able to, which can be scary.
Yeah. And it is scary. If women are listening to this and they're about to embark on their own journey, maybe getting divorced or preparing, I recommend everyone prepares for divorce before before they leave. But if you're listening to this, it is hard and it is messy, but the other side of it, because there is a light at the end of that tunnel, is so much better.
Yeah. And I think that's an important message. And everyone that I have on, and when I talk about it, it is a hard road, but the other side is amazing.
Yeah. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. On some days that might just be one little baby step because you're just too exhausted, but you just keep moving forward and eventually you get through that tunnel.
Right. Exactly. So how did your inner voice from your youth encouraging rebellion or acting out manifest in your struggles for sobriety?
I mean, that's an easy one. I was such a rebellious teenager. We were actually at dinner last night. We were at a concert last night with some friends we were talking to, and it had come up that they had never tried drugs. And they're our age. They're, 30s, 40s, 50s, and they had never tried drugs. I'm like, God, that didn't even occur to me as an option. Like, yes, that will make me feel better. That will make me feel better in my own skin. That will make me fit in. Of course, I'm going to do whatever you put in front of me. I mean, I was looking to feel better because I felt so icky on the inside, even as a child. And I've always suffered from horrible anxiety. I didn't have the words for that and OCD, but no one really talked about those things. And I had learned very young to keep it to myself. So these were also ways for me to not be so anxious, not to have these obsessive thoughts in my brain. But that feeling nobody loves you, it's hard to love yourself when you're a child and you feel like no one loves you. So I acted out. I did drugs. I drank. I snuck out. I mean, my parents at one point sent me to boarding school thinking that would be the solution, not realizing you just had kids with less supervision and in most cases more money. And so it was just off to the races. So I look back and the fact that I was never arrested is pretty amazing. But by the time I was 18, I had gotten a lot of that out of my system. And that's when I met my ex-husband. And so I was ready for calm. I was ready for easy. I was ready for quiet.
And so during that early years, at least, that's what it was.
It was. And I've always said this, a lot of people don't believe it, but it's the truth. I never drank when I was pregnant or nursing. So I would have very long stretches. Obviously, that's a lot of kids and a lot of nursing. So I did have a lot of long stretches where it was nice and simple and easy. I mean, not that having small children is a lot of hard work. Don't get me wrong, that it's hard in its own way, but it wasn't always chaotic drinking. There was definitely long periods of sobriety, but
I also want to note that you are obviously an amazing mother for your children, you were sober.
yeah, I mean, for me, I got sober and they are the recipients of a sober mom.
No, but I mean, when you were pregnant and nursing, you made a
Oh,
choice.
yeah. And it never even occurred to me to drink when I was pregnant or nursing. Like, and a lot of people think, well, then this is what I got a lot on the show. Well, then you couldn't be a real alcoholic. And my thought was, I could go long periods without drinking. It's what happens when I have a drink.
Right.
Yeah.
I have had clients, although I didn't treat them because I'm not trained in this, but I've had clients who would only drink on weekends. But when they drank, they would binge. They're
Right.
alcoholics. It's,
Yes.
you know,
It's not how long you can go without a drink. It's what happens when you do.
exactly. Post Housewives, what have been your most significant challenges in maintaining sobriety and authenticity? And how do you manage that internal voice today?
I think the hardest thing in maintaining my sobriety is, that traitor within. Jen just left. So the kids went to their dad's house about 4 or 5 days ago. And Jen was out of town for that night, for the first night. I was home alone. And I just went, you could have a drink and no one would know.
Mm.
And I was like, ooh, whoa. Cause I haven't had those thoughts in a while. And I called someone from the program. I knew what to do and said, this just popped in my head and it scared me.
Mhm.
So I definitely think that is something that has nothing to do with being on television or doing the public eye. I think that is this thing that every single alcoholic, which is the term I use. Some people use alcohol use disorder. I identify as an alcoholic. It helps me.
Mhm.
That little voice where that seemed like a good idea. And that is something that I have to still deal with. If I'm having a particularly bad day, especially when it comes to my emotions, especially around the children, I will get that thought. I wish I could have a drink. And that scares me. And I think that's something that no matter how much time you have, you always have to sort of keep an eye on that little, traitor within saying, you could have one drink, no one would know. Oh.
Right. Go away.
I imagine it as like devil on my shoulder. That's how in my imagery. And it's like, stop that.
Exactly. And I've heard people talk about the devil. Actually, my editor says it. An angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. And they battle sometimes.
Yeah.
But I assume then the support helps though. You had someone to call.
I did. And I've been really lucky in my online community, but now in Nashville, because when you move to a new town, you sort of have to find your sober people again. I have been so lucky to find amazing sober people here. A lot of them are part of the queer community too. And and these are people that I go out with. These are my friends. These are people I genuinely call family. So I am so lucky to have such a tight group of people that if I call, pick up. I'm so lucky because moving to a new town, finding that support so quickly was a blessing.
Yes, because you have the stressors of moving too that you're
Yeah.
dealing. And I know, and then divorce was happening also.
Yeah. And that's still going on. So we are legally divorced, but we're still dealing with stuff like child support and all that. And that has been really hard for me. I think, I've been blessed that I have Jen that helps and my parents have helped, but I think being left with nothing so abruptly, so quickly with, the 4 younger children was something that I had a really hard time with. That was like, how could someone that was my family that loved us and loved our children do that? And then I had to sort of take myself out of that and go, this has nothing to do with that. This is your journey, figure it out.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's something that still, I will say, everything else in my life is pretty calm and manageable. That's the one thing that's still like, okay, over
Yeah.
here, you have to deal with this. But I try not to get too ahead of myself.
Mhm.
And I found that that's a great thing for any problem. Just take it day by day.
Agree with that because otherwise it's too overwhelming.
Yeah.
baby steps, but you still get there.
You still, exactly. It's baby steps. You still get to the end. You just get there a little slower sometimes.
And more manageable.
Yeah.
While describing sobriety as both liberating and complex, can you discuss some difficult, tactful choices you have made while embracing your true self and staying sober?
I think the biggest decision I made was to go so public with it.
Yes.
That was hands down the craziest choice I made. I wish I could say I thought it through. I didn't. I just went with what my gut said. And that ended up being the best decision I made. Obviously, not everyone who gets sober is feeling it, but I do think being open about it gives you that accountability. Tell your mom, tell your best friend, tell your employer. Don't feel shame around it. But the more people that know, the more people you're going to be accountable for. Mm-hmm. So I really think that we have to break the stigma of alcoholism being bad and treat it like we do any other disease or disorder, and find your community, find your people, find people. So when you're having a bad day at work, you can say, hey, I'm getting sober right now. I need to take like a 5-minute breather, because people understand that and they respect that. Don't try to do it all on your own and do it quietly.
Excellent advice. So how has becoming an advocate in the queer and sober communities reshaped your relationship with your traitor within?
I was actually thinking about this the other day. But it was from a nasty comment on Instagram when someone said, how come being queer is your whole personality? Obviously, it's not my whole personality, but I don't think when I came out, I realized how being a lesbian would change my whole life in ways that I couldn't have even fathomed. And it's sort of like I've taken off the weight of the patriarchy. I've sort of disentangled myself from this web of needing validation from men. And
huge.
That changes my life in ways that I can't even begin to understand. When you stop wearing the weight of all of that, it's so freeing. And so I think the more that I talk about being queer, the more that I advocate for the community, the more I realize it is becoming a part of a big part of my personality, because it's the biggest part of my life right now. And always will be. And the friends that I'm making and the causes that I'm working with and the people that are being, either benefit from all of this that's happening right now or being actively harmed. This is my community. And these are the only people that I feel like really understand what I'm feeling without me needing to say it. So it's family in a sense that I've never experienced. I never experienced through any other way that I identify myself. And it's hard. It's almost as if like my DNA is linked to everyone in the queer community. It's like family on a molecular level.
It's healthy family.
Yeah. And I will say, like, that was something I didn't expect when I came out and started advocating so much, for this to become such an internal part of who I am, not as like, oh, I have blonde hair, but as my core, as my heart, and as my soul.
Well, I mean, I think the healthiest place, someone once asked me, what is recovery? And I said, recovery is to be a place where I can just be me.
Yeah.
Period, and you're in a world now that it sounds like, I mean, of course you have and the outside world that tries to get in there, that lets you just be you.
Yeah. And it's so beautiful. And it's almost as if the rules of modern civilization don't apply to me anymore in a weird way. And it's just like, wow, this is great.
Reflecting on your journey, what is the most significant insight you've gained about self-sabotage, healing from the past wounds, and living authentically?
I think the thing I've learned the most is that it's okay to live a good life.
Okay.
You don't always have to wait for the other shoe to drop. You deserve beautiful things. You are loved. And you're perfect just the way you are.
And I think that if I would ask you, what would you say to your younger self? It may be just that, right?
I would first tell her that she's gay. But I think if I could say anything to my younger self is that you are loved. People love you.
Yeah. And is there anything you want to add before we close today?
I just want to say thank you for doing all this. And, you've helped me so much when I was not at my best, when I couldn't understand these things and helping me understand dynamics and stuff. So thank you for talking about this and helping people sort of realize that they are born to be who they are and helping people find that.
Yeah. And thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.